Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Today I have a special guest, somebody that's been with us before. I'm here with Tom CZarnik. In his retired years, Tom has become what I call a poet, an author, and an activist, and quite a bit more. How you doing today, Tom?
Oh, I feel great seeing you again.
Well,
I've been in the shadows watching you and listening to you in the morning. So I feel like I'm connected to your program. I haven't really gone away, but I haven't identified myself as much as you probably would like me to. And I haven't been writing as much poetry lately. I've been writing articles for Daily Costs mainly. So that's what we want to talk about today, too.
yeah, I've seen that you've written quite a few articles at Daily Kos, but let me just tell our audience, as you know, Politics Done Right, we have a lot of audience participation, both in chat, phone calls, and people even send me emails. And Tom is one of those that he's participated in all three: phone calls, emails, chats, but there's something else special. He is what I call our poet laureate, because he sends out and he puts out some great limericks that have great presence for any particular day. In fact, I don't think we've gotten a limerick from you lately, Tom.
Right. I haven't been writing limericks. I've been trying, actually, off and on. I don't know. I don't see as much humor going on. It's a little tough to make a limerick about Charlie Kirk, for one thing. I mean, that's pretty sad. So, I mean, it's, I don't know. I guess I lost my inspiration a little bit because of the dark side that's been in the news lately. But I plan on doing some more. I will. I got some ideas. So I hope to get something to you soon.
Well, the limericks that you gave, a lot of times you've taken a lot of negative stuff and made it humorous. In fact, you get quite a bit of claps when you do it on from our Substack audience whenever you come out with one of those limericks. But there's a concept that you have called creative writing activism, and I think the limericks fall right into that domain as well. So why don't you tell me about what you, as a writer, and I really want to stress that as a writer, what you think is your contribution with what you call creative writing activism?
Okay, this is something new for me, because I've been writing. I've been writing this journal. It's called Corona Notes since May of 2020, and I have about 450 pages written. And until recently, I only read it or submitted parts of it to close friends, and they liked it. And one of the ladies that was listening to what I was reading and kind of liked it said, well, why don't you publish it? When are you going to publish it? And I kept thinking, I don't know, if I should, because I'm a little bit nervous about that. What if people get the wrong idea? What if I get harassed? And then I came across Daily Costs and or Costs, whatever. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. Ordinary people, it seems, are submitting articles or stories, and they call them stories, and they get published. And they don't necessarily get a lot of likes, or it doesn't go viral. And I've got some. But the point is you're out there, that you're putting yourself out there. Now, I did one thing that to kind of calm me down a little bit about doing that. I took up a pen name, and the pen name is John Quill, JONQUILL, so that I wouldn't necessarily be identified directly with my writing. So I've kind of chickened a little bit, but it has an impact. And even though it maybe I may get 20 people look at it or whatever at one time, it's like you feel like you're doing something. You're putting something out there. You're putting part of yourself out there and letting people know that you're on this side or their side, and you want to be sure that other people that have the same thoughts can do the same thing and encourage them. So my goal today, if anything, would be to encourage your listeners, your people in the chat, or people that call in, think about maybe submitting something online to Daily Costs. And I'm sure from listening to people talk to you and the writing in the chat room, that people have a lot to say. And what I like about Daily Costs or Coast is that there's no word minimum or maximum. I mean, I've seen articles go on and on and on, but a lot of articles are just a few hundred words, and they're great. I mean, they make a point, and that's it. They're done. And I think that's fantastic. You don't have to be an author. You don't have to use all kinds of big words and things. You can just say what you're thinking and put it out there.
It is amazing because, believe it or not, I find that a lot of times just reading what people put out there is a catalyst for my programs.
Oh, good.
You have been a catalyst for my programs many times. And the reason why, again, is we are trying to have some sort of an interconnection with people. And I think that is what's really missing in our society today. This rugged individualism that some preach is just a way of keeping folks apart. And when folks are kept apart, they think there are differences that aren't really there. And I think a lot of if you take a look at your writings, I've published some of them on politics, politicsdoneright.com, and you place some of them out there as well. We have quite a bit of your limericks out there as well.
Yeah, I need to update that. Yeah.
Yeah, so and now that you found Daily Kos, which gives you that unique audience with those journals that you write out there. I think they call them, is it journals they call them? I think they call them.
They call them stories.
Diaries.
Oh, there's diaries. But a lot of them are stories. They call stories too. It's like a story, but it's not a fictional story. It's a true story.
Right.
And they watch. They have an editorial staff that watches what you're putting out there, so you don't do something that's way off base. I've gotten a couple notices.
You have?
One of my articles, I use the term maggots, MAGATS, and I couldn't figure out at first what I did wrong. They blocked me, and so I had to write to them. I said, "What did I do?" And he says, "Well, look at your first line." So I looked at it and said, "Oh, they didn't like that. They have a policy that you're not supposed to attack people, especially groups,
right,
with some kind of name or something like that. They don't have a problem with you attacking political figures and making funny names and stuff like that, which I sometimes do. But it's when you start putting a group and you're saying everybody's in this category, they don't like that. And I can understand that. I don't want to be called a libtard. So
yeah, as long as it's done fairly, I remember being hit at Daily Kos before, and I actually went all the way to the top and said, "Hey, guy, this is actually factual." And it was like, "Yeah, I agree with you, but we have a staff now that actually goes through and,
Yeah, they look at it. Well, I was glad somebody was looking at it. I thought, wow, the editorial staff is really, they're reading what I'm writing. That's anybody that's a writer, I don't really have a goal of selling lots of books and stuff like that. And this is free, Daily Kos is free. You're not getting anything for it. You're just getting, the thrill of having something published. So, that's the real thrill is just having somebody read what you write and feel that you make a difference. And that's why I thought calling it creative writing activism, might perk up some other people to try their hand at it.
Actually, describe what you, when you say creative writing activism, I mean, a lot of people can't go onto the streets. And and I think if I understand your meaning correctly, it is like, but you have other platforms that you can actually make yourself be heard, right?
Well, this is the main one. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you still have WordPress and you have Substack now, and I can put stuff out there, but I'm never sure who's reading it and how many and what impact it's making. That's what I liked about Daily Kos. You're getting some feedback, and it just encourages you to go and keep doing it. But if you're just sending stuff out, and let's say you're writing a letter or email to the congressman, or you're sending out letters to different groups, and if you don't get a response, you're thinking, well, what's the point? I'm not making a difference, and maybe I shouldn't be doing this if nobody's going to acknowledge. And it's just a thrill to get even one or two people saying, "Oh, that was good," or "I'd recommend that," or "Here's a comment. Maybe I didn't like it," or "I have something to add." But you're like you do with your chat room, you're getting some feedback. You feel like, okay, people are actually paying attention, and that's good.
That is so important. You're right about that. One of the reasons I am, and it doesn't matter how many people I eventually get, I'll always have that chat feature. And not only have the chat feature, but the chat and the phone, the emails features, because I want the feedback. And it doesn't, the truth of the matter is, let me just say one thing. when you write on places like Daily Kos, or even if you have it on my politicsandright.com website or whatever, I can tell you that most people, because we can actually see the metrics behind the scenes as far as how many times that article was pulled up, how many times, so we see that. And the fact of the matter is, when you put on those platforms, your article is pulled, right?
Okay.
The thing about it is that most people pull an article, they read it, they don't like it, they don't put a comment on it, they don't. In fact, I read a lot of things, and I am trying to be better at it, in that I acknowledge that I like the articles that I'm reading, or I am trying to teach myself, or I shouldn't say, I'm trying to get sufficiently disciplined to put feedback, because I mean, just listening to what you just said, it gives me even more impetus that I need to go ahead and do that, because you just said it, right? When you put something out there, you want to know, is somebody actually seeing it or not? And while we can see the metrics behind the scene, you can't. So it is good for us to acknowledge it with the likes and the commentary.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a couple examples of the creative part of creative writing activism, because that's what really appeals to me. It's not so much just telling a story about what's happening in the news and that everybody's read. It's like thinking. You talk about critical thinking. You're always trying to write something where I'm stretching the boundaries of my thought process and trying to, challenge myself and other people. And one of the articles I wrote is called "I Am Spartacus." And what I did is I compared the movie Spartacus from 1960 with the movie Superman, which was recently came out. Mm-hmm. And the main thing that I came up with was that I was really impressed with the political part of a Spartacus movie. I don't know if you're aware of it, but at the time, there was a lot of blacklisting of writers and directors and things. And Kirk Douglas decided that he wanted to make this movie and give credit to the people that were blacklisted, that were writing this movie and producing it. And he got into all kinds of trouble for it. And and the ironic part of it is the movie itself, I Am Spartacus, has to do with people speaking up against authority. The big scene in Spartacus is when the Roman centurions were looking for Spartacus, who had been a rebel against the Roman Empire. They thought they had him cornered, and there were a bunch of people, but they didn't know which one was Spartacus. So they went to the rebels, and they said, "Okay, if one of you will turn in Spartacus, you'll be free. You won't be a slave anymore." And what happened was they looked at this Roman centurion, and one by one they said, "Well, I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus." And they all said, "I'm Spartacus." And, the Romans were like, "What? We can't tell who." So they ended up crucifying all of them. Mm-hmm. But the point is that I thought about this, and I'm thinking, wow, what a lesson for today. I mean, I don't know whether this is going to happen or not, but I suggested the possibility that maybe with this the ICE raids and abductions, we need more people standing up and saying, well, I'm an immigrant. I'm maybe speaking Spanish and say, no hablo español, no hablo inglés.
No hablo inglés,
yeah. And then I want my lawyer. I forgot the word for lawyer. But anyway,
mi abogado.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, that's kind of bold. I know, and maybe they get really mad, but maybe we need a group that does that more and more. It's a nonviolent form of protest. I'm sure it would make them mad, and they'd arrest a lot of people, but it would get a lot of attention, and maybe it would change things. I'm not sure, but that's my thought.
Well, actually, it would change things. So when you get 3.5% of the people activated, you actually get a change. So I think a lot more people need to be doing it. It's amazing, because if you take a look at what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, how that came back, that was the pushback was hard. I wish we pushed back hard like that on a lot of other things, right? Not just entertainment.
Yeah. Well, the other one I did recently, which it was different because I never saw this published before. It wasn't an article, really. It was a one-act play I wrote called Jesus, Heyzeus, and it was, of course, a reference to Jesus at the same time. But it's
us,
yeah. In fact, I've heard that before used, But I was making a point in this very strange play that, first they come for this group, and then they come for the next group, and then they're eventually going to come for you. And that was the point of the play. There was if you look at Jesus on Yeah, look for it. I made an AI picture. That's one of the things too. I don't use AI for writing, but I do use AI for pictures sometimes. And I was able to make a picture of this big pair of orange buttocks on the stage, which represents someone we know in the highest office in the land. And these people were being pushed into this crazy the butthole of this big statue almost. And it was, and I had a lot of fun writing it. And I kept thinking, one of the things I came up with was a group of people that had these big eyeballs. They were like ceramic eyeballs on a stick. And they were looking at everything that was going on. And they were the Nazis. Mm-hmm. But they were looking at everything. And I had fun playing with that word and all that. And I've heard it before, but the idea of big eyeballs looking at it was looking at the end of this play that's looking at the audience. And the audience is supposed to be a little bit nervous by the end of the play because maybe they're coming after you next. So that was interesting. It's just the way that came out. But that's part of the creative part of it. So you don't necessarily have to write a story. You can write a poem. You could write anything that's interesting.
Well, you wrote another one called The Department of Defense X.
Oh yeah, that's the latest one. Yeah, war. Yeah, that was an interesting thing. And again, it was like it just struck me that now when you read the Orwell's book 1984, he plays with that with the different agencies in the government Oceania and the country Oceania where. The Ministry of Truth is actually putting out lies, and different bureaus do the opposite of what the name says. But then I thought that's called doublethink. But I thought, well, why not make it triplethink? In other words, make the description or the words used for the bureau or the agencies exactly what they do, especially today.
Right.
And actually, Trump. It's interesting. He changes the Defense Department into the Department of War. Which I think maybe that's not a bad thing because you're actually saying he's signaling you what he wants to do with it. So we should pay attention what he changes the name. See, I thought of the Department of Labor as being the Department of Management, and all these different, Internal Revenue Service would be the refunds to the billionaire service, that type of thing. So you can play with those words and you can make something out of it that will make people sit up and think, well, whoa, maybe we should be paying attention to words and names. And the other thing I did in that article about what it's called, what's in a name, because that's from Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, is I took the word conservative. And I think I talked to you about this too at one time, but the word conservative, and I hear this word used for the right wing, I call them right-wing radicals, regressives. I think they should be called regressives. But the conservatives are not really conservative. We're the progressives. We're the conservatives. We're trying to conserve what FDR did and what has been done over the decades to improve our country with all the different Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all the different programs that help people. And we are trying to conserve. We're trying to conserve the air. We're trying to conserve the earth. We're trying to conserve people that are poor and sick. And it's like, yeah, we're the conservatives. So I played with that a little bit too.
You also played with something called a Nobel Peace Prize.
I was playing with the word peace, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but I think that Trump should be given some kind of award for just to keep him quiet.
Well, here's what you said. You said maybe it was to spite his Wall Street critics that Taco Man decided to get off the fence for once and give the green light to the GOP hawks at bomb the hell out of Iran. Actually, several big, beautiful bombs were dropped on few Iranian.
Yes, big, beautiful bombs. See, I don't even remember. That's the other thing about writing. A lot of times I don't remember what I've written until I go back and look at it. And sometimes I'm going like, whoa, did I write that?
That was a good article.
I'm going to give you a second here.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about it, again, when you talk about creative writing activism, as you're thinking about this and you're thinking about how can you paraphrase certain things, etc., it does two things, right? It does something for you, and it also does something for the others who are reading. I mean, the stuff that I write is so damn serious. And so, I mean, every now and then, it's not like you want to leave the politics, but you want to have a little bit of fun as well. And that's what I find in a lot of the stuff that you write in here. And not only that, it makes you think.
Right. And I had another one called the two cone choice. And this was kind of, I got some likes on that one, actually quite a bit, because I was really getting upset with people saying, oh, the Democrats are not doing this, that, they blew the election. And I said, the Republicans basically give you this choice. They put this thing out that looks like a really beautiful ice cream cone with two scoops on it, and it's got a waffle cone, and it's beautiful looking. And then when you try to taste it, it tastes like crap, because it really is made out of crap. While the Democrats, they give you a plain vanilla cone or maybe yogurt, and it's healthy. And the people say, well, why should I make that choice when I can get this, great two scoops?
Right.
But they don't realize it's crap until it's too late.
But, and that's why I'm in creative writing activism. I like that. Well, look, we're coming close on our time. So why don't you tell me or tell our audience something? Why get into creative writing activism? And, how can they get into creative writing?
Yeah, well, I would say I would expand that notion from creative writing to just creative activism, because I don't want people to say, well, I don't have any talent, I can't write, I can't create art or what. But I would like to see more people thinking outside the box, and just, whether they're talking to other people or you're chatting on your show or calling in, let's really go after different ways of going, changing our perspective on what needs to be done. Now, one of the things I came out with, and I can't remember what article it was, and I think maybe the last one. Oh no, maybe it's the one I'm working on. But I sent something to the Democratic Party, which is really making me nervous, because they're not really, I'm afraid they're not going to be doing enough. But creatively, I thought, why don't we, instead of having all these protests all over the country, which, by the way, I'll be going to the next one on
October 16th.
16th, no Kings. But why can't we do something in Washington, D.C., and surround the White House? And I was thinking, other countries that have overturned their authoritarian governments, they basically went around to the presidential mansion and they just stayed there. And they beat pots and pans, and they would, do all kinds of theater. And then I thought they could have these eyeballs looking over the fence at just make it uncomfortable for him. I mean, I don't want to just, make him feel threatened, but we need to be more active in that sense, so we can be heard. I'm afraid he doesn't care what people are doing in Detroit or Ann Arbor or whatever around here. But, I would like to see us, maybe the Democratic Party, especially with this shutdown looming, push for some kind of a protest around the White House. But whether it's possible or not, I don't.
Yeah, I think the Democratic Party right now is far too quiet. I think they need to be doing quite a bit more. By the way, it's October 18th, the No Kings.
18th, okay. 18th,
October 18th. I want to make sure and not mess up that you haven't. But I agree with you. I think there's a lot more that we need to do. I think we need to be more present, and I hope we get there. But anyway, Tom CZarnik, author, author, limerick. I'm going to also call you a creative writing activist, and we can throw a whole lot on you. Thank you, first of all, for being a great listener and watcher, supporter of all that we need to do to move forward, my brother. Well, thank you for having been on Politics Done Right.
It's been my privilege. Thank you.
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.